think I'm still on. Yep. We'll spend the rest of our time talking about some things you can do for officer support. I don't know, I'm sure during National Law Enforcement Week, because Hastings has had some officers killed in the line of duty, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't have some kind of a memorial service. Okay. National Law Enforcement Week is the week in May that has the 15th. So whatever week that is, if the 15th is on Sunday or Wednesday, doesn't matter. Whatever week the 15th of May is, that's National Law Enforcement Week. The 15th is National Peace Officer Day, I think is called. That's not a bad time for the chaplains to be visible. You know, you talked about cooking some meals. Somewhere around that time, our chaplain corps furnishes a meal for day shift and night shift. You were talking about doing night shift. When I quit as a community service officer this summer, back in June, I can't tell you how many officers came up and said, are you still going to do the dinner? It's kind of become a tradition. And yeah, we'll still be doing the dinner. But, and it's the same menu every year. We have barbecue pork, we have baked beans, we have coleslaw, potato salad, and dessert. Every year. As far as a general support, it's one of the best things we do because they will sit down and just visit with each other and just have a fellowship time. You know, church folks like to eat, you know, till we eat again, that great hymn, till we meet again. I get so confused. That's one thing you can do. That's a very natural thing for the chaplain corps to do, is sometime during law enforcement week, feed them. You know, do something to say, we appreciate what you do. We appreciate your sacrifice and your being willing to put yourself on the line and all that kind of stuff. A very natural thing calendar-wise. And you may be involved in some kind of memorial service. You know, I know Hastings, Phelps County, and I don't think they've had any line of duty deaths in, you know, years and years and years. But I know that that's part of their routine. They have a memorial service for police officers killed in the line of duty. In the state of Nebraska, our law enforcement memorial is at Fauner Park. If you have not seen it, if you've seen any memorials, the Vietnam Memorial or any of those kind of things, it's kind of like that. But it lists all of the law enforcement officers of any kind, whether it's, you know, somebody with Union Pacific that does the law enforcement stuff for them, or State Patrol, or, you know, whoever it is. Their names are on the wall. And on the 15th, they will have some kind of service every year. So that's just something for you to be aware of. If you ever had the opportunity to go to Washington, go to the Law Enforcement Memorial. It's worth your time. You can see the names of the officers from this area that have been killed in the line of duty. It's not other kinds of death, it's line of duty death. In Nebraska, let's see. I think the total from the time of statehood is 128 or 130, somewhere in that area, of officers killed in line of duty. You know, it's kind of strange to the public that it's such a big thing for us. But there's a bond in law enforcement. You have the same kind of bond with firefighters. One of them goes down, it affects everybody. I can't really explain it. It's that thin blue line that you read about, that sense of commonality that, yeah, we've had 3,000 soldiers killed, but we've had, you know, 200 policemen killed this year. There's just something wrong in our minds with having a police officer killed. I can't explain that. But that's something that you can do. It's a very good thing to do. Your officers will appreciate it. they'll be grateful to you. They'll appreciate it. Another thing that we've done is we've done some events, and we haven't done any because we didn't have any for specific needs recently, but we've done spouse academies where we've brought it's open to any spouse, law enforcement spouse. We've dealt with topics like schedules and unpredictability, public scrutiny. I even set up with a lawyer to draw up wills one time. We've dealt with departmental things. When we've had officers involved in shooting, we've had time for the spouses to come together. I described the closing distance incident that we had. When Chad had his incident and when he was shot and killed the suspect, we had a time for the spouses. And not a lecture time, just a time to bring them together. Let them cry together. Let them express their fears together. But tune into things like that. Because your spouses are out there kind of dangling by themselves. The department may do some things for them, but it's probably not enough. And they can use that camaraderie. They need that kind of support too. So consider that. We have something called unseen backup. Maybe one of the best things I've done. This is prayer support for our officers. It's pretty easy to do. It doesn't cost much. Unseen backup involves the officer requesting to have someone pray for them. Now, you would understand the psychology of them asking for someone to pray for them. I'm not going to tell them what the psychology of that is, but there is a psychology there. We ask the backups to pray on a regular basis for their officer. I don't try to define regular. Haley's comment is regular, comes every 77 years. Hope they pray more often than that. But if that's what they do, that's more than the officer had before. We enlist somebody to be a backup for an officer. This past year, 2012, we had 130 requests from officers. That's County Police Department, Buffalo County Sheriff's Office, that's dispatchers, that's corrections officers, that's State Patrol. Got one officer in Iowa requesting to have an unseen backup. Had 125 backups from 5 states. From Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa, New York, Georgia. Had one in Texas for a while, but he moved back to Nebraska. All we ask him to do is pray for him. That's all we ask him to do. Now, some of them send birthday cards. In fact, we've nearly had fights in briefing because an officer gets a birthday card and says, my backup sent me a birthday card. Well, I want that backup. I can't do that, guys. One of my new officers one time asked me about unseen backup. He says, let me make sure I understand this. I said, okay. He says, officers have to request a backup. Yeah. He says, some of those officers don't go to church. Right. Most of them don't. Some of those officers would be labeled agnostic. Yeah. So even the agnostics feel like there's value in somebody praying for them. Evidently. I'm working on it right now for 2013. I have one officer that every year, without exception, when he turns in his request, and they have to renew the request every year. This is a calendar year thing. They renew their request. Every year he'll come up to me and say, well, it can't hurt me any. You're right. Can't hurt you. Now, back to Chad's story. Chad is fighting for his life. He's been shot. He's fighting the suspect. His unseen backup had a scanner on. Recognized the name of the individual he stopped. While he's fighting for his life, they're praying for him. By name. And if unseen backup never does anything else, made a difference there. Was Chad's size a factor in his survival? Absolutely. If it had been one of our little deputies, they'd been dead. Because the suspect was a big boy, about 300 pounds. Was his training a factor? Yep. Because he moved at just the right time. Was his vest a factor? Yep. No vest, he'd probably been dead. If something don't show up on any report, though, you can do that. Unseen backup, praying for your officers, not going to cost anybody a whole lot of time. Not going to cost a lot to set it up and get it running, but it can make a difference. I don't share requests with the unseen backups without officer approval. But there's been many times when somebody's had a surgery or a death or some problem with a baby or something that, hey, could you let my unseen backup know? Yeah, I can do that. Officer support. That's what this is. You got to figure out what shape that takes for you. There's all kinds of ways you can do it. We certainly don't have a lock on it. Those are just some of the things that we've done in the area of officer support. Thoughts, questions, observations? So what do you think about this thing called chaplaincy? You need to pray through it if you haven't. You need to talk with your church body so that they're on board with, some of your time is not going to be committed to them. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like at a basketball game, the best referees are in the stands.
Right now with Hastings PD, since there is no chaplain, no chaplaincy really program, I mean, it's just, again, in the infancy stage. What are they doing now as far as death notifications and what kind of support system do we have in place now?
I'm guessing there's nothing. As far as a death notification, I'm guessing the sergeant on duty would either go or designate somebody to go. We used to do a week of on-call at a time, and we had 3 chaplains that would not do it. They would not commit to a whole week. Now, if you had to go to Lincoln for something or you had a funeral or something, they'd cover for you, but they would not commit to a whole week. Then we were moving into a time when a 4th chaplain was saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. And it was the week commitment. What we went to is a rotation. Chaplain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They call the chaplain at the top. Whether they get the chaplain or not, they move him to the bottom. If they get the chaplain and he can't respond, he's in the middle of a wedding or something, he just says, I can't respond. So they drop him to the bottom. They call the next one. It's working. The guys that were not going that would not take a week of on-call are doing this. The one that was going to quit is doing this. So instead of being down to 2 chaplains with 4 people that would fill in once in a while, we've got 6 chaplains on a list who have the freedom to say, I can't come right now. They drop them to the bottom of the list, and then you work your way back up to the top. It's working. Dispatch is okay with it. Administration's okay with it. I'm ecstatic because now there's 6 guys that are handling calls instead of 2 or 3. So it's working for us. I don't know what arrangements you guys are going to make, but that's what's working for us. And I would suggest it. It's
Lean that way, because that's what they're already used to as far as record service and other things. This is
exactly.
this is the system already in place, so it would just fall into their system
Exactly.
to be
Just like a tow truck.
utilized. I mean, the tool utilized properly is a good tool.
And the advantage for the chaplains is, we would, those of us that were taking a week of on-call would rearrange our calendar. So we would be available. We would be in town for our week of on-call. Well, sometimes there's family things and life. And it's just made it easier on everybody. It's also taken some load off me because I was getting an awful lot of calls because I was on call every other week. When we just had 3 of us taking a week of on call, I was on every other week. That gets to be a load after a while. You get one of those weeks where you get a couple of death notifications and a couple of jail visits. You guys don't have to worry about jail visits, but you got 3 or 4 things, and you're trying to do sermon prep or whatever. You're kind of running on fumes by the time you get up to the pulpit on Sunday morning.
Most of the death notifications I did was always at night. Very few were ever in the day hours. I can see that to be the case.
People are just very inconsiderate about when they die. I, yeah. So you're just going to have to find what works for you.
I think we're going to go that way to start with at least, and then hone it from there.
But you got a chief that's on board. He's trying. I think he's really trying hard to get a grasp on everything as he's come in the last 2 months. You got a captain that's very supportive. I know Captain's story. I'm sure he's supportive of chaplains. He used to be a Kearney PD officer, but that's before my time. You've expressed the willingness to serve, and I hope you come away today with a feel of what you might be getting into if you didn't already know. A couple of you veterans kind of have some idea. But I appreciate your time today. If I can be of help to you as you're getting things progressing down the highway here, just give me a call. Right now, my calendar is pretty open since I don't have a work schedule.